Hi, I'm your host for the session, and just wanted to remind everyone that if you have questions at the end, there should be a microphone. Yes? No? Okay. Just speak loudly if you have questions then, and to silence your phones during the session. Kathleen Folger, Catherine Mannion, and Esther Ahrens are here to present Breaking Old Habits, How Libraries Can Lead the Pivot to Institution-Wide E-Textbook Provision.
Hi, thanks so much everybody for coming out this early. I know it's first thing in the morning. None of you must have had a super wild night last night. So, good for you. I'm Catherine Mannion. I'm a library sales executive at Cambridge University Press, covering the Midwest and New York. So this morning, we're here to talk about the higher education platform from Cambridge, which houses our digital textbooks. You'll hear from two of our librarian customers about their experiences with e-textbooks in general, and then specifically with Cambridge's higher education platform. So just to give you a little background, our HE website was launched in 2020 because we wanted to provide a site with more features than Cambridge Core. So Cambridge Core is our ebooks platform. It's great for reading, but we knew textbooks needed more features. So we developed a different platform to kind of meet that need. We did build the HE site on the same architecture as Cambridge Core, so that usage reporting and searching covers both platforms. Everything kind of folds in together. The higher education site also provides the ability to annotate, highlight, cut and paste, print, download citations, and to read textbooks both on and offline. Cambridge textbooks offer unlimited simultaneous institutional access, which ensures that every student in a class can be looking at the textbook at the same time. So our site has been live for just over 2 years, and we're continuing to regularly update features, getting feedback from librarians and faculty, and also add new additions and titles to the site. Our beta launch included just 43 e-textbooks. Now there are over 1,200 titles on our site. We're also continuing to add new features, including learning management system integration, digital examination copies, and group annotations. So today we're presenting perspectives on digital textbooks from both the US and the UK. While librarians in Britain have long been accustomed to providing digital textbooks at their institutions, this has not traditionally been the case for higher ed in the US. However, as American colleges and universities work to tackle important issues such as textbook affordability, access for distance learners, and equity in education, some are finding that providing digital textbooks through the library can be part of that solution. So what can we learn from our UK counterparts? What are the benefits to offering e-textbooks for students and faculty? And what impact is providing digital textbooks having on teaching, learning, and research at institutions worldwide? So today, Kathleen Folger from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, is here to share her perspective and explain how she went from skeptic to cheerleader for the Cambridge e-textbooks full collection. As the Electronic Resources Officer at the University of Michigan, Kathleen coordinates the selection of online resources. She works closely with colleagues across the university's many libraries to identify and acquire all types of digital resources, including ebooks, e-journals, streaming video and audio, digitized primary sources, and data sets. Kathleen has been the librarian at the University of Michigan since 1995, previously serving as reference and instruction librarian at the Shapiro Undergraduate Library, and also as the Economics and Public Policy Librarian at the Harlan Hatcher Graduate Library. So welcome, Kathleen, and thanks so much for sharing with us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today. So the title of the talk is Rethinking Textbooks in an Academic Library, a U.S. Perspective. So what I plan to cover today is I'm going to talk first a little bit about the University of Michigan, the context, because the idea of an academic library in the U.S. It's not monolithic. Like each of us is different. The University of Michigan is very large. Some places are very small. So I want you to understand the context in which I'm bringing my perspective e-textbooks. Then I want to talk a little bit about what strategies we're currently using for textbooks. The success we've had so far with the Cambridge textbooks, and then a wish list for publishers so they know what we're looking for out of a textbook product. So first, to talk about the University of Michigan. U of M, as we call it, University of Michigan, because that's too long to say. So U of M has a large number of degree programs. More than 100 of our graduate programs are rated in the top 10, according to U.S. News and World Report, if you can believe what they say. And we're very large, over 51,000 students for fall, and over 32,000 undergraduates. So it's a very large community of scholars, and with a large contingent of undergraduate students. So basically the university is really known for our breadth and depth and quality of our research and teaching. So the University of Michigan, like I bet many academic libraries, our collection development policy is we don't buy textbooks. But then, well, yes, we do buy textbooks if the instructor requests it, so we'll place that on reserve, but otherwise we don't buy textbooks. Oh yeah, we do have this endowment where we buy textbooks for engineering, but other than that, we don't buy textbooks. Well, yeah, so sometimes the title matches our profile and it gets auto-shipped or it's part of our ebook package, but we don't buy textbooks. Well, yeah, sometimes students will donate copies or they just forget them in the library and end up in our lost and found. And we'll, it's actively being used for a class, we'll add it to our collection, but we don't buy textbooks. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many different ways in which textbooks end up in our collection. But we have done nothing comprehensively. So officially, we don't collect textbooks. You look at our catalog, there are many textbooks, but there's no rhyme or reason to what's in there, really. We have not gotten a lot of pushback from our students about the lack of textbooks. And I think a lot of that has to do with the economic status of the University of Michigan students. So 2017, a study was released that looked at 27 highly selective public colleges and universities. Out of those 27, the University of Michigan had the highest median family income, $154,000 per year. We had the highest share of students who come from the top 1%, so more than our fair share of the very richest students. And we were 23rd out of the 27 in the percentage of students whose family made $20,000 or less per year. So less than our fair share of lower income students. So no pushback from students because most of them could well afford to buy their own textbooks. Then in 2018, our central student government decided that, they'd heard concerns about, Ann Arbor is an expensive place to live, and it's expensive being a student at University of Michigan. So our central student government came up with a campus affordability guide, which included really helpful suggestions like, you don't have to get weekly manicures, you can skip some, you could cut back on your maid service and laundry delivery. So you can imagine the reaction of the students who consider themselves not rich. And so they actually, just organically, an ad hoc group of students came together and they used Google Docs and they built a guide to being not rich at the University of Michigan. And it included things like, where do you get free and cheap food on campus? What are the best gift shops in town? So there was a lot of really practical advice for people who don't come to the top 1%. One of the things that was in that guide was the library was identified as a potential source for textbooks. So many of us in the library were reading the guide and going, ooh, we really should be doing more. We've been doing, as I've shown in the earlier slide, the textbooks were getting into the collection, but not in a really comprehensive way. So we started thinking, maybe we should be doing more. And about the same time, there are a number of initiatives that were announced from the university. So we have things like the Go Blue Guarantee and the Hale Scholarship. Those were financial aid packages aimed at low-income students within the state of Michigan. So the number of lower-income students coming into Michigan has increased over the past 5 years. 70% of our in-state undergraduate students get some form of financial aid. A quarter of them pay no tuition. If you're from the state of Michigan and your family makes less than $65,000 a year, automatically your tuition is free. But those students may or may not qualify for other forms of student aid, which cover things like room and board and textbooks. So we're increasing the number of students from lower socioeconomic classes, but we're not giving them a full ride that covers all their expenses. So in addition to that kind of increase in the number of students who really need assistance in boarding their textbooks, we're also seeing increasing expectations from both faculty and students. And that was true pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, our reserve staff noted fewer copies being placed on physical reserve, fewer students coming in to use those items on reserve, and an increase in requests from faculty for online versions. So I said instead, but I should have said most frequently we get the, well, we want it in print and online. It's like, no, we're going to pick one or the other. But then in the first year of the pandemic, we actually were able to provide better online access to textbooks than ever. So it started, as part of the initial pivot. I don't know if some of you might remember, many publishers opened up access on their sites, and I just want to say now I am forever grateful for that. That made a huge difference in our students' ability to finish out the semester in a really incredibly scary time. So I'm so grateful to publishers for doing that. In that initial pivot to online period, March through the end of the semester in 2020, more than half of the reserve titles were available to students, either publishers opening up content, and then we also comprehensively went through our textbook list to try to identify things that had been on print reserve and buy an online version of it. And then in fall of 2020, we implemented the HathiTrust Emergency Temporary Access Service, ETOS, and that also opened up textbooks in ways we hadn't been able to do before. And then once ETOS went away, we got lots of, like, why can't we do that? Why, you made the books available before, why won't you do that now? And interesting conversations about copyright and ensues from that. So our current strategy on textbooks. So one thing we've done is worked with our course reserves staff. We encourage staff to choose online access whenever available. We had kind of said that's what they should be doing, but a lot of them were uncomfortable, didn't quite understand the models, or which platform is better than the other. So one of the things we did is kind of created a set of guidelines that said, here's our preference for sales model. We want unlimited whenever possible, but price is a consideration, so maybe nonlinear or concurrent access. If it's cheaper than the unlimited, 3 user, we hate 1 user, but if that's the only option, we could do that. So we kind of went through the models and the platforms to indicate what our preference was. And then we set a price limit because some of the staff were uncomfortable being, spending lots of money and like, is this okay? And should I do this? So we set a price limit. Once a title exceeds that limit, it gets referred to a subject specialist to make the call. We're also trying to be more proactive. So what I just talked about relates to our course reserve service. But what we're also trying to do is not wait for faculty to make the ask. but to be proactive in identifying the content that is being used for classes and trying to acquire that. Our campus uses Barnes & Noble service. So in theory, our faculty are entering textbook information through that service. So we request a copy of the textbook list every semester. We run a holdings comparison in Alma based on the ISBNs. And then for titles that we don't already hold, we will ask one or both of our major ebook aggregators to run a kind of a title matching service to identify which of the ones that they can sell to us. One thing that we are not doing is we're not pursuing an inclusive access agreement. I know some campuses have done that where there's kind of a student registers for a class, there is a textbook that's been assigned for that class, and they get charged a course fee to cover the cost of the textbooks. We are not doing that. U of M is highly decentralized. It is very hard to get the right people in a room to do anything, and it's such a hot potato because faculty get really worked up about, are you impinging on my academic freedom, or you're saying I'm going to have to use certain books. So no. So it's just something. It's very hard to get the momentum going on. So we're being more proactive in our acquisition of textbooks, and we think other schools are as well. I recently attended a presentation given by Audrey Marcus of ProQuest, a part of Clarivate. She says their most recent rolling 12 months of data shows 9% of their worldwide ebook revenue is from textbooks. She doesn't say that varies widely depending on the region. So in North America, it's only 3%, while in the UK and Ireland, it's 23%. Australia, New Zealand, it is 38%. But the numbers in all of those regions have been going up. So in the US, basically, it went from 0 to 3. I don't know if that's all of us. I think other people are buying textbooks as well. And I know ProQuest recently introduced a course reserve model for which you could purchase textbooks as well. So we're seeing changing models in response to this desire to provide more textbooks. So what I would say is in our efforts to expand the availability of ETextbooks to the campus, our biggest obstacle is not the cost, it's availability. There are so many titles that publishers will not sell to us. And I cannot tell you how hard that conversation is with faculty when they see the titles available from Amazon. Like I can buy a Kindle edition right now. Why won't you buy this book? It's not for sale. They won't sell to libraries. And a lot of the faculty do not believe me. Like we have these really uncomfortable conversations that, well, why wouldn't a publisher want to make money? So I just want publishers to be aware. You are putting us in a very difficult situation, and it makes conversations with faculty very hard. In addition, the titles are, when there are titles available for institutional licensing, it's a limited user model, prices are relatively high, and it's still very hard for our course reserve staff to identify which titles are available and which model to select. So in comes Cambridge in 2020 with their new higher education, and I got an offer from our sales rep at the time, and I thought the price seemed pretty high for an individual title. There were discounts if you bought multiples, but I thought there's no way we're going to buy more than one. So no perpetual access rights. It was subscription only, which we hate. And so I remember thinking to myself, should I even forward this offer? Is anyone going to want this? This is, it's not going to work. But in fall of 2020, we had no print reserves. There were quarantine requirements, like we were holding books for like a week after someone had used it, so that does not work for reserves. So some of our subject specialists decided, yes, it's worth the money, and so we ended up selecting 5 titles. And so, what do I know? It turns out there was actually a lot of use, an average of 3,290 total requests per month in the first year. So when you look at these numbers, you can see that maybe Cambridge textbooks are a good thing. Unfortunately, I didn't actually look at these numbers like until very recently, actually. But fall 2021 came around, and my subject specialists were coming to me saying, are we going to do the e-textbooks again? Can we do the e-textbooks? And so I was like, all right, let me know if you want it. I hadn't looked at the numbers, didn't know, so I was just whatever. And then, like, they kept coming in, one or two, I set a deadline. People missed the deadline and came, can I add? And at some point, we were more than half, we had selected so many titles, we were more than halfway to paying the full package. Given the breadth of the subject areas we cover, we're like, just get the full package, we'll try it out for a year, see what happens. This year, the average use went down significantly, but a lot of the previous year's use was, there was one title, the actuarial mathematics, huge use, and it was being used again in 2021, but I think the instructor went too easy. I think the instructors might have changed because it was like basically the same number of unique investigations, but total investigations were way down, so I think someone was slacking off on that. And then, in spring of 2021, I finally looked at the user stats because we were trying to decide, are we going to keep funding this or not? And when I looked at the numbers, I thought, oh my gosh, these look really great, much better than I thought. And so what we decided to do is, an official plan, 1-year pilot. We would advise faculty in advance that we have this package for at least a year so we can get through the next academic year. So if you're thinking about Cambridge textbooks, we're going to have them, so feel free to let your students know about it. We did identify it as a pilot, and we sent it out as an invitation to partner with the library to address textbook affordability. We didn't want faculty to think we just had Cambridge titles and just the higher ed titles. So we mentioned the Cambridge World Platform and all the books there, but also mentioned the University Press ebooks and ebooks from other publishers. So please, if you're interested, talk to your subject specialist to help identify titles that you could make available for no cost to your students. So I just wanted to share kind of a year-over-year comparison of use. So what's happening is more titles in the package are being used, but the average number of requests per title is going down. And we think that reflects that, yes, there are those textbooks that are actually being used as a course for courses, but we think individual researchers are encountering this content and they're using it, but just using it very briefly. And finally, I just want to conclude with my wish list. This is not comprehensive, so I reserve the right to come back to you later and say I want more. So please, please, please sell us your textbooks. If you're worried, you get feedback from potential customers of models you're considering, although apparently you should not ask me, because what do I know? Or you could try a pilot with a small number of customers. We were a part of, DeGruyter has the University Press Library. Before it had the fancy University Press Library name, it was the University Press Pilot Project. And we worked with DeGruyter for several years. There was a small group of libraries and a small group of presses to come up with a model that both sides were comfortable with. So, a multi-year project. Michigan's always happy to be involved in that, and I'm sure other schools are as well, so get a variety of sizes and, missions. Please prioritize accessibility. It should be integral and not an afterthought. And this is both for the platform and for the content as well. The content has to be tagged properly in order to be read properly by assistive devices. Please avoid challenging pricing models like charging per student. We don't get access to the enrollment numbers live in a different system, so we don't get access to those. So it makes it hard for us to come up with that number. We would prefer unlimited user models. We would like to have perpetual access, not subscriptions. But as you can see with Cambridge, that's not a deal breaker, that is a subscription product. Please have a digital preservation plan in place for the content. Older editions have research value. And if at all possible, minimize those any access obstacles, specialized logins, or overly restrictive DRM. And I'm always happy to talk about textbooks with anyone, so please feel free to reach out to me via email or via Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. We truly appreciate your willingness to share your institution's experience with the Cambridge textbook collection as well as your wish list, and that's just fantastic. So now what we have for you is a short video available. Our UK librarian, we couldn't do the Zoom in logistics, but we did record a video from Esther Ahrens, who is the head of resources at the UK's University of Leicester. Esther started her career in libraries by taking a job in a small departmental library at her alma mater, University of Cologne in Germany. Although her main task was offline cataloging, she was hooked and she stayed in the sector doing more cataloging, retro conversions, digital conservations, knowledge management in a cultural heritage institution, supporting library systems for a supplier, and lately she has been branching out into the content acquisitions and provision side of things. She has been at the University of Leicester for a good 10 years, and in her current role as head of resources since 2018. In the video, she will share their library's textbook provision journey, how they arrived at their digital first policy, and how Cambridge's e-textbooks fit in with their overarching collection strategy. I do have the subtitles on. These are the YouTube subtitles. Sometimes they don't match super well. I will say she calls the HE website HE Cup or He Cup, and sometimes the subtitles see that as hiccup. So she's speaking to our HE platform when she says HE Cup.
In the UK. My name is Esther, and I'm going to tell you why and how we use Cambridge University Press e-textbooks.
Okay. We'll get. There we go. Oh,
Hello to everyone in Charleston from here in Leicester in the UK. My name is Esther, and I'm going to tell you why and how we use Cambridge University Press e-textbooks. When I learned that in the US, and maybe in other countries, textbooks are usually provided by the teaching departments and not by the institutional library, I was a little bit surprised because here in the UK, university libraries have long been part of the textbook market. They are just seen as any other learning and teaching resource, and therefore the business of the library. And true to the nature of a library service, that is making content available on a shared basis, that means that we're not providing one copy per student, but one per 10 or even more students. For libraries, a ratio of 1-to-1 is not just too expensive to purchase, but for example also too expensive to shelve and otherwise to process because you have to weed it again. And in the world of print textbooks, this results in the whole cycle of requesting, collecting, returning, requesting again to share the limited resources. Inevitably, and where possible, students would buy their own copy, and I'm sure they still do. And although rarer but still happening, in some cases, a department might choose to provide one copy per student. And that might still happen too. Within the UK higher education sector, the University of Leicester is a middle-sized institution which puts equal emphasis on world-changing research and research-inspired education teaching. And this is served by one central library, which I'm part of. When learning, teaching, and research resources appeared in digital format on the scene, that is, as e-books, my institution saw, or at least suspected, the value in subscribing to whole e-book packages, because such packages would increase the amount of digital content considerably and would drive up usage of single titles purchased for resource lists. So we made our first package subscription in 2010, providing access to requested, also known as adopted items, on a platform where there was additional content available and as easily accessible. As models have developed further, we also explored evidence-based selection and demand-driven acquisition. All this paved the way, eventually, for promoting a digital-first policy based on student demand and changes in the market. Further changes came in the UK in 2012. 10 years ago, the cap on tuition fees was raised significantly. After that, universities could charge about £3,000 per year for a university course. This was changed alongside a different funding model for the higher education sector. So instead of central budgets, universities should recoup their income from much more directly from their students. And this resulted in a new maximum of £9,250 per student if they were resident in the UK. Not surprisingly, that caused a lot of protests, both from students and institutions, but that has remained in place to date. As a reaction to that, universities sought to address the potential threat to student numbers by demonstrating their value for money. In the University of Leicester, we reacted with an internal program to identify and then remove or at least reduce any additional costs that students might face on top of the study textbook of course, work. This no added cost initiative coincided with an offer from an ETextbook aggregator. They must have had their ears to the ground. We picked this up despite the subscription licensing model, which was pretty new for monographs then, and the associated expense, because it provided the content at no cost to the students, which was the aim, plus without the need for them to share all the returning, which was a huge added benefit. 24/7 access for the entire year, plus added functionality like annotating and so forth, what's not to like. You might say we created a problem for ourselves by raising expectations that all digital content would be available in this way. And we all know this is neither an offer from the publishers or suppliers, nor is it financially viable. But as a service and as a business, we're always looking to improve. So our first ETextbook pilot was well received, usage was good, not unexpectedly of course, because these were titles that have been marked as absolutely essential for the course or the module. Then the coronavirus struck and the world went into lockdown. The universities needed and wanted to continue their operations somehow. For us, the headway we had made through digital first in the 5 years prior to that really paid off. Although there was and still is lots of material not available digitally, of course, any residual reluctance towards e-content dwindled. And we could see the market react. Initially offering content for free, like Cambridge University Press, and developing more e-textbook models, also like CUP. We're now a school on floor which has modules with 200, 300 or more students, requested content that has been moved over to higher education from Cambridge University Press. We investigated the whole eco package. For this, we took into account the need for a requested title, the access model, the ease of access both in setting up and for the end user, the pricing, and any alternative provision. We, the University of Leicester, were already using ebooks on Cambridge Core. We had run a successful EBA with them in 2017-18. Our academics, especially in social sciences, arts and humanities, seem generally happy with the quality of content by CUP. Numerous titles featured on multiple online resource lists, not just from small floor. For background, our online resource lists are put together by lecturers for their students, but from there the library harvests the demand to obtain, purchase mostly certain resources. And this is the main route for faculty to request learning and teaching material. So for ECUP, there was literally no technical setup needed. For instance, and quite crucially, of course, authentication was already working. We already knew that the platform had good usability, providing of meeting accessibility standards. When it came to pricing and licensing, we would have preferred to have perpetual access options rather than a subscription model. But at least ECUP offered true institutional access and not a model based on student numbers. And this was particularly important to us as we had already evidenced that not every student would make use of the copy reserved for them. And paying for access is then not claimed is really not good at all. We also find that new editions would be made available at no extra cost throughout the subscription period. We do understand though, that subscription models for scholarly content work. And academic libraries are moving others gradually away from not needing to own every single bit, to shelve every single content, just in case. The University of Leicester, in its collection development strategy, acknowledges that collections use a mixture of owned, licensed, and shared content to maximize their budgets. Considering a good return on investment was then a driver towards subscribing to the entire higher education CUP, with multiple CUP titles on resource lists, not available elsewhere. The expenditure was near enough, at least, to the price for the full package. So subscribing to all of ECUP would reduce the price per item and item request overall. And our hope was that adopted content on ECUP would drive usage toward the other included titles. And following slide shows how usage actually developed. These figures are mixing, I know it's a bit tricky, mixing count of 4 and count of 5, a fairly steady number of Cambridge University Press titles on offer, with the exception of the year 2017-18 when we ran the EBA. But that fairly steady number of titles has split into those on Cambridge Core and those on ECUP since the introduction of the latter. Usage didn't just follow suit, but notably it was higher for ECUP than for titles on Cambridge Core. Last year, 21% of the total titles accounted for 59% of the usage. Although for unique titles, that is only 31%. Not surprising, of course, because more ECUP titles are on the resource list than Cambridge Core titles, and usage is, of course, driven by that, certainly in the broad course provision. Further analysis is needed to identify which titles are not on the resource list and how their usage compares. Now, the number of titles on both platforms has fallen ever so slightly in the last 3 years, by about 130. But in contrast, usage has risen steadily in the last 4 years, with a dip in the first pandemic year. And while this isn't a massive upward trend overall, this is certainly good enough value for money for us. So to conclude, I'm not going to pretend that I'm in favour of the ETextbook model in principle, but to start with, I wonder what actually classifies an electronic book as an e-textbook. What is used as a textbook for a certain module at a certain institution isn't necessarily one for the next course at a different class. And restricting the access options for certain content limits a library's choices to serve its particular community in the best and its most cost-effective way. One of the selling points for the ETextbook platform is their added functionality like bookmarking, note-taking, collaboration. But my admittedly anecdotal knowledge suggests that these functionalities are not used to their full potential. Faculty are mainly interested in the content, pure, the text, the graph, the figures, and they want to secure sustainable and equitable access for the students. Some faculty staff might embed the full functionality very tightly into their teaching, but our responsibility as a library for the whole institution means that we are operating a mixed economy, making use of a variety of offers and provisions. And yes, higher education from Cambridge University Press is one of them, and we have renewed our subscription. We will, of course, continue to monitor the take-up by our patrons, future developments of this product, as well as the direction of travel in the wider market and sector. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you so much. We have, it's actually 9:11, so if you needed to leave at 9:10, please feel free to head out. If you'd like to stay, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to take some questions. Yeah.
Hi, it's for you, Kathleen. So the University of Michigan has a library publishing scheme, doesn't it?
Yes.
I was just wondering what you thought the role of library publishing will play in the future of e-textbook usage in institutions.
That's an excellent question. We have actually worked with our University of Michigan Press previously on providing access to a few textbooks. We actually had a faculty member who had written a textbook, and pros reverted back to him, and then we published that for him. So I do think there is that potential. The challenge is getting faculty to. They're the linchpin in all of this. Like, they're the ones who make the selections, and trying to get them to understand the importance of affordability and what we can do for them, is really challenging. But it's understandable. Many of them, they're researchers looking for tenure, and teaching is part of that. But it's great teaching reviews alone don't get you tenure. So it's really challenging, but I do think, a lot of our instructors use university press titles for their courses, and so that's, what we've got the Greater University Press Library, we've got most of those presses, and multiple times I've had faculty reach out saying, I'm thinking about using this book, would it be available, and it's either already in the collection, or I can see it's going to be published in the next month. So that product has also saved, has made a difference for our students. So I agree completely. I love to actually talk to Charles Watkinson, who's the head of our University of Michigan Press, a little bit more. We have our we're in the library together, but we also are kind of a little siloed. So
Thank you.
I have a very nuts and bolts kind of question. My eyes kind of lit up when you said you have a Barnes & Noble store on campus.
Yeah.
Our Barnes & Noble store refuses to give us a textbook list to do this kind of work. What's your trick?
So our trick is we actually go through, there was a provost committee that chose what the, what our textbook solution was going to be. And there were a couple people from the library on that, including Charles from the University of Michigan Press, and they insisted that we had to get access to the textbooks, to the textbook list. So I just sent an email to someone in the provost's office, and they sent it to me. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I sold textbooks in print for 11 years in the 90s, and that's why I'm working in electronic now. But I think one of the things that I don't think we would have an easy time switching to a UK model, in particular because so many faculty would have to change their behavior and their selection process completely. Completely. I mean, they can, I think there are some faculty that'll see what's available in the library, like you were saying, but I think it depends on the course and it depends on the person, right?
I agree completely. We have some faculty who have recognized the issue of textbook affordability. A lot of faculty, when you encourage them to look at open resources, like that's not how I would teach it, so they don't,
That's
they
right.
don't want to
That's right.
use
They
it.
have a
But we
certain
have had
approach.
some faculty create their own open course, textbooks, and make those available. But then, you have the others who just, I want to teach the way I want to teach, this book does it the way I want it to do, and we're going to use that. But it's very hard when you're paying, I was talking to someone last night, who had to pay $200 for a textbook in a class they were taking, and it's just, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. I think also in the data that you were showing, I think it would be interesting to know what books, what disciplines, what course level. Obviously, intro, general can for, 1,000 or 1,500 at Michigan. I hope I don't sell one chemistry book into that market, obviously, so it would be interesting to see the distribution.
Yeah, I started to do that, but then I didn't.
Yeah, that's where you start bending your brain a little bit.
Yeah, I can say our STEM librarians were the ones that really grabbed onto it immediately. Like of the 5 titles we picked in the first semester, all of those were like, it was the actuarial math and
Yeah, upper
then
level.
several engineering things. Our business library did add a title in that winter, so we started branching out beyond STEM, but I did actually look at the numbers. So the titles with the most use, the top 10 were all in STEM fields. The 11th title was some kind of political science title. So you had to go down a little ways to get to social sciences, but it was in there.
Thanks for your presentation. I heard from Esther right at the end that the faculty were really interested in providing the book and that the extra functionality was really not as important as the content. Is Michigan looking at doing any kind of assessment or usability study on actually what students are actually doing with the platform to determine how important it is for the added bells and whistles versus just providing the content? My main concern here is the Tower of Babel that's going to occur because given the 275 plus courses that you have, if we had 50 publishers in vendors and 50 platforms, 50 apps, that's really an untenable situation for the user, let alone for institutions and libraries. Thank you.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about trying to get data from Cambridge on how many, the numbers of annotations or who's doing it. I would say that we have a lot of our faculty have been asking about using third-party annotating services. Like, can I take this ebook and put it in Peruse All? Or, and so we know there is some interest by some faculty in having some kind of group annotating. Sometimes the faculty will, they just do their own annotations and they want the students to see what they're annotating. But in other cases, they actually build assignments where groups of students will work together to annotate sections of the textbook. So we know there is interest in doing that. But yeah, the question is, does each platform build its own system? And so then students are going from platform to platform, and it's different each place they go to. And that's not an ideal situation. Although I will say, I think students are more adaptable than we think. I used to always feel like, no, we should just pick one ebook aggregator because they don't want to go to all these different ones. And the reality is, they're just going to click on the link and figure out what to do once they get there.
Thank you. I just had one plug. Every dollar we spend on buying duplicative and redundant platforms is at less money, fewer dollars we have for buying collections. So there's the other side to library budgets being strapped by having to buy multiple duplicative platforms.
Last question. Okay. That's good.
So I don't know if you can answer this or not, but you've seen the trends more than me. We're in the same boat where we're not spending money on textbooks, but we are. So we're trying to come up with a plan that works. What I'm worried about is You know, when Wiley just, you know, took out all of those books from the ProQuest package, and then they wouldn't sell it to us individually. You have a wish list, but I'm worried it's going to go in the other direction. I'm worried I'm going to spend, you know, the next year or two creating a plan and getting the funding, and then all of a sudden no publishers are offering e-textbooks anymore. Do you think that's going to happen?
I think we're seeing that publishers are already changing what they do with textbooks. You know, some of it is like limiting to like Vital Source and those other kinds of services, like they won't license to the institution, but they'll sell to the individual. I think they're trying to, my assumption is they're trying to address like the secondary, you know, the used print market. Like some textbooks aren't coming out in print at all, they're only available online. So we can see publishers are doing, you know, some of that, but I also think that we have good partners in some publishers. I think university presses especially are a real opportunity. You know, the Pearsons and Cengages of the world, I think they're always going to be a challenge. But, you know, for those kinds of, university press, kind of more academic presses, I think they're willing to partner with us. We just have to recognize that the model has to be sustainable for them and for us. And we have to, I really do think we need to be working together on this to come up with a solution. Because I think ultimately we want students to have access to that content. And it's just a matter of figuring out a way that is sustainable for all of us.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming.